Under this head cover, I have Amazon's cheapest driver, only £25. And today, we're gonna give it a little run out and see how it performs. So the driver in question is this one, the V300 from Slazenger. That didn't come with it. It cost me £25, and as we know, golf clubs are getting more and more expensive to the point where you can't buy a dozen Pro V1s for the price of this driver. You could actually get 2 of these drivers for the price of 1 dozen Pro V1 golf balls. But does that mean that this driver is going to be terrible? I think to put it through a test, we firstly need to understand who actually this driver could be aimed at, and actually then go on to test it. And I want to see as well if it can stand up to its V300 name. We're going to try and actually get this club to go 300 yards at the end of the video. Stay around for that one. But firstly, let's find out a little bit more about it. Let's get an idea about how it feels, what it looks like, and then we're going to get hitting some. So now we know what the driver is, let's talk about how it looks and how it feels. Firstly, how it looks in hand when you pick it up off the shelf. And for a £25 driver, I was expecting it to look, you know, tacky, cheap, naff, and just horrible, as where actually it doesn't look too bad, to be fair. It's got some like detailing around the head of the driver. It's got this quad flex and it's a 460cc, and you can sort of see shapings around the head as if it was like saying, well, this is where the weight has been distributed for this quad flex. So sort of trying to fit into the bracket of maybe like what we see from more expensive drivers. And then in terms of what I would say more that I would be looking for from this sort of driver would be that when you get, you know, your top end driver or a, you know, decently priced one, couple of £100, compared to something like this, it's how the paintwork looks. Because a lot of the time when you see lettering or logos and things, you see that they've not been etched that well, that the paint's maybe run over, it's not been wiped away correctly. But overall, to be fair, everything looks really sharp on it. There's a sort of glittery finish on the top of the driver, which actually looks pretty decent. The logo on top, for me, this big Slazenger logo, the Puma or whatever it is, it looks a little bit cheapy. It's a little bit too big if maybe that was a tiny bit smaller. But even though it's cut into the driver head and painted in and filled in, actually looks tidy. And then, like I say, the rest of the lettering, the logos on the bottom of the driver look decent. And even from sort of where the face meets the crown of the driver and stuff like that, it doesn't look like there's any paint spilled over anywhere. So overall, it actually looks pretty decent. And then like graphics and decals on the shaft, everything looks pretty much spot on there. It's not like jumping out and saying, yeah, this is a £25 driver, it looks really rubbish. It actually looks half decent. Then when you actually come to put the golf club in behind the golf ball, firstly, sort of in hand, it doesn't feel too bad. One of the things with like cheaper golf clubs, sometimes the components that are used to build the golf clubs aren't the same standard as we would see from a higher price club. So you get maybe an alloy head that'll feel heavier. The shafts might be even steel. There is a steel option in this driver. But actually in hand, it doesn't feel too bad. It feels pretty balanced and doesn't feel overly whippy or anything like that. And for a regular driver, I was expecting it to really be sort of slapping around in my hands, but it doesn't feel overly bad. The grip maybe feels a little bit more rubbery than what you would get from some more premium grips. So I would probably say that that wouldn't last overly long, but as a first feel in hand, it actually feels good. And then in behind the golf ball, 460cc head, it doesn't look bad, you know. It actually looks half decent. Like, it's got quite a deep face. The profile of the driver looks, you know, similar to sort of some more modern drivers, as it were, or more expensive drivers. It's not standing there looking like a, you know, a £25 driver that you put down and think, oh God, I don't want to hit that. It actually doesn't look bad. It looks half decent, you know. Just measuring it against my driver here now, and actually, if you come in close there, we can see both butts are together. And as we look down, we can see it's gone in ever so slightly shorter. So when you place them down, actually, it is just that tiny bit shorter. And it's amazing how different that feels when you've got it in hand. But it's nothing drastic. It's not almost as if it feels like it's a 3-wood. It just feels pretty much, I would say, about ½ an inch shorter. But yeah, doesn't feel too bad. Overall, first impressions, getting it out of the box and seeing it, I'm actually pleasantly surprised, but let's give it a few hits now. We're going to hit 4 or 5 shots, just get an idea of what it feels like off the face and what it's sounding like as well, because to me that's one area where a cheaper driver generally sounds a little bit more dead and dull and a bit naff. But let's give this £25 driver a little hit. Lovely day to be hitting a Slazenger V300. Do you know what? It's gone straight down the middle with a tiny fade. A little bit shorter than what I would expect. Wasn't my best strike, slightly toey. It didn't feel too bad. It sounded a little bit different, sounded a little bit more not as solid off the face is probably a good way to describe it. It's probably a little bit more sort of hollowy and sort of dead off the face, but is it a couple more? That's pretty much identical to the last. That was a good strike. Flew well, felt half decent. It doesn't feel unstable. Oh, that is a great drive. 25 quid and it's nearly on the green. That sounds pretty good to me. Like I say, sounds a tiny bit more sort of dead off the face, but in terms of feel, there's nothing that I'm latching onto to say that it feels horrible. So what is good about like during the golf swing, the feel of it, with a lot of the cheaper golf clubs, what you would tend to find, like I said earlier, components aren't the best that they've put in, but it doesn't feel too unstable. Yes, there is a little bit of, I can feel a bit of kick in there. It's a regular shaft, it's not built for me obviously, but it doesn't feel really horrible and twisty off the club face. Like I've hit a couple now, I've hit 3 shots. One was dead center, one was slightly toed, and then another one slightly toed as well. And it didn't feel like the club was all over the place. It felt actually quite stable, which is good, really, for, you know, when you think of expensive golf clubs, that's what we're paying for, with stability, forgiveness, and trying to get some consistency of it. But actually, during these shots, it felt pretty good. Even that one was pretty heeled, and it actually felt pretty good and actually looked like, you know, the other shots. It didn't look like it was diving out the air and was a dramatic difference from a middle to a missed strike. Let's just hit one more. I mean, it just goes so straight. Beautiful. Feels good. So overall, on feel and looks, we've got to be obviously aware that the driver's only £25 and you pay for what you get, you know. If you're going to go and spend £25 on something versus £100 on the same product, that £25 one isn't going to look as good. And yes, it looks a bit more basic, but it does its job. It looks tidy, it looks clean, everything looks in place. And then in terms of feel, for the punter who's going to be buying this, you know, someone who's new to golf, who wants to just hit a driver, who's maybe going down to the driving range, it feels what you would expect a driver to feel like. So in terms of looks and a feel, it's a pass on that. It's, you know, it's doing what it should be doing. It doesn't do something drastically different and make you think, oh God, like, is that what it, oh no, I'm never hitting a driver again. So for me, that's a positive. Let's take a look at some of why we would see such differences in price from maybe £25 to £100 to 250. So let's just have a look at some of the differences between what is a £25 driver and something that's going to cost you in the realms of about £500, and also some that are maybe around the £50 to £100 mark. Firstly, one obvious difference here, when you're buying a more expensive one, you're going to get something like that. You'll get a head cover with it, which with the Slazenger V300 you don't get. Now, the main differences are A, the components that are used, and then B, the technology in the head. With the Slazenger one here, there is some titanium in the club head. I'm not sure if it's a titanium alloy mix, so we don't know like the grade of the titanium that's in there. When you see other manufacturers, it'd be like a beta titanium, forged titaniums and so on, which obviously bumps up the costs of production, which obviously would be fed back into the driver. So we don't get that. We don't get things like the Sure Fit necks or the adjustable necks on here, so it comes in a 10.5 degree loft, and that's all that comes with it. In terms of the shaft, again, It's a graphite shaft, which is good. There is a steel version in this one, but sometimes the quality of how these are made, the tolerances aren't as tight. So sometimes they're known or prone to breaking a little bit earlier. So you might actually snap these if you swing them a little bit too hard. You might end up getting a snap club if there was any sort of knocks and undue care with it, as it were. And then when you move into the grip, even that just feels a little bit more sort of plasticky, rubbery. The sort of indentations where your hands and fingers are going to sit are a little bit more exposed. So I would say that this sort of grip wouldn't last as long as something that you would get on maybe a premium grip, as where we're seeing like the Sure Fit neck with this one, the movable weights around the head, and the grip quality is a lot better and the shaft quality is a lot better. Knowing that this costs £25, if you were to jump online and look at something that came from the second-hand market, if we just throw up some here, I looked on a website that we use over here in the UK. You can get clubs that, yes, they're going back 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years maybe. They are from well-known brands though, your Pings, your Callaways, your Titleist, your TaylorMades, and they have a lot more technology in them. Yes, they're going to be used and it depends on what the condition would be like, but for something that is £25, I think we've got to say that this is basically aimed at someone who is new to golf. They want a cheap driver. They maybe want to go down to the driving range. They don't really care if it breaks after 2 or 3 months. They just want something that is going to actually help them experience what a driver is for the first time. And as I said about looks and feel, it definitely does that. It feels okay and it seems to be going an okay distance and it feels okay. So if you're looking at buying this as maybe a cheaper option, I would maybe divert to maybe the second-hand market, because you'll get some of what you would see maybe in the expensive driver technology-wise. Yes, it's going to be a little bit dated, but it's going to be a little bit better quality than what you would see with your £25 driver. That being said, let's see if the Slazenger V300 can live up to that 300 name. So now it's the time we've all been waiting for. Can we get the Slazenger V300 to do just that? 300 yards is the goal. Can I get it to go 300 yards? We're going to be using the GC3. We're talking total distance here, so carry and roll, and see if it can go that far. Shot one, let's go. I reckon we get it done. I reckon the V300 stands up to its name. It's not going to stand up like that. Wow, that was heely and horrible. That has gone so far right. Ball two, come on. That is high and right again, 240. Oh, that's close there. We're getting up there, 260, so add that 10 yards of roll, 270. I reckon 2 more balls we get there. That is such a good drive. I would literally buy that down here, and it's so close to the 300 mark we want. 287 plus that 10, 297. Last ball, I reckon we get it over 3. Bit high and right, that didn't release it enough. 287 the last one. We didn't get that 300, but we got very close to it. And I think, guys, overall, that Slazenger V300 driver for £25, like we said earlier, we know who it's aimed at, that person who wants to go down to the driving range and just give the driver a whack. If you're looking at actually buying something that you'll probably use for 6 months, a year, probably not that. You probably should be investing a little bit more, but overall, a driver that's going to get you out there hitting it, guys. Hope you've enjoyed it. Check one of the other videos out here, and we'll see you very soon.